Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Dick Fleming. During the Vietnam War, I was a member of 1st Force Recon and Recon Battalion, and I tell my story about my time in Nam in a book called Chasing Charlie, and in this channel. I also have a website called firstforcerecon.com, which I place photographs that I took at the time, and so links to other resources in the recon community. So you might find that of interest as well if you're interested in the Vietnam War and that epoch. My URL again is firstforcerecon.com, one word. So I had finally made it out of Vietnam, so I thought. I had completed my 13-month tour of duty. I think it started when I first got there, it was 12 months, and then they extended it for another month. So I had caught a C-46 out of our base camp, and that had flown me directly into Da Nang airfield. And I went over to the Quonset hut where they were loading guys onto the next plane out to Guam. And they had given me my paperwork and everything, and I had my ticket, so to speak. And I was waiting there with a few other people. There weren't any Marines with me, but there was a few Army guys waiting. They were from the motor pool, Army motor pool. They were waiting to get sent back to Guam, and I was just sort of standing there. I really didn't have anything to say to these guys, and I was sort of numb. All these emotions were running up in my mind. I couldn't believe that I was really getting out of Vietnam, and I was terrified that something would happen, that a mortar would come in or something like that, and I'd be killed on my last day in Vietnam. Well, I was sitting there and waiting for that plane to be refueled, and with those other guys. And then along comes the two 4x4s. They must have had 40, 50 people in them, and they were all Air Force guys, mechanics, and some office jocks. And they got out, and they stood off to one side. And I was looking at them. I'm wondering how many people this plane can take. And sure enough, when it's getting time to embark to get in, to go through the gate, the sergeant comes up with the paperwork, and he's got the names of everybody on it. And along comes another 4x4, and this time it had some officers in it, and in front of that was a van with more officers and some civilians as well. And he signs them off first, and they go into the cabin, and then he lets all the Air Force guys go through. And when it comes to my turn, and I was the next one after that, I was the next one in the line there, and he goes, "Hold it a second, Marine." He goes, "We're all full. Can't take you today." I looked at him. I said, "Well, what am I going to do now?" And he goes, "Don't worry." He goes, you can spend the night here at Da Nang in the bunks over there. We got bunks for you. Get some chow. And tomorrow morning, you'll be first in line. Oh, damn. So I wasn't particularly hungry. I was sort of really disappointed. So I went out the gate and got myself a big bottle of Southern Comfort from the group vendors out there. And I went back to where I had been waiting, and there was a bench there. And I started sipping my Southern Comfort. And as night fell, I just laid on the bench there and looked at the sky. And this song kept on running through my mind. It was popular at the time. I'm leaving on a jet plane, don't know when I'll be back again. And I said that is rolling around through my mind. until the Southern Comfort did its job, and I went to sleep. And when I woke up, it was morning, and now another plane comes rumbling up. I was determined to get on that thing, and damn it, the same thing happened again. I'm standing there, probably one of the only Marines in the group, a couple of Army guys, and then another whole contingent of Air Force guys come along in 4x4s, and sure enough, along comes that same van loaded to the gills with officers, and they get on the plane. Well, I went over to the sergeant and I go, I was here first. And he goes, rank has its privileges, soldier. Rank has its privileges. And first I felt like saying, I'm not a soldier, I'm a Marine. But he must have taken pity on me, because after the officers got on in the first class, he allowed me to go into the economy class next. And I was there with these other guys from the Air Force they were all complaining about the way they were treated in Vietnam. And how the air conditioning broke in their unit, and they were sweltering in their bunks. I didn't say anything. I was really numb. And so the plane takes off. We pass over those pristine beaches of Vietnam. And everybody's yelling it out, yopping it up there. Glad to see it go, and all my feelings, just coming to the surface, and I just sat there and tried to thank my lucky stars. So they flew us into Guam. That was going to be the place that we were going to get readjusted there for a couple days and get our uniform again. And we had been. Everybody was in camouflage or utilities, and so. We had dropped off our uniforms and all the civilian stuff at when we went into Nam, and that was going to be stored for us at Guam until we returned after our tour was over. So the next morning, they lined us up, and we went over to the supply area, and they were handing out boxes, and I could hear some grunt complaining, at the top front of the line, but I didn't know what it was about until I got up there. And he goes, Fleming, okay, got 3 boxes you put in, right? I go, yeah. He goes, well, we had a terrible fire here, about 8 months ago, and 2 of the boxes were destroyed. 2 of your stuff was completely destroyed. We managed to save this 1 box. And he hands it to me. And so I take the thing and, open it up. And I had one set of uniform, standard Marine Corps uniform, and my standard cap. Had a pair of shoes, nice and spit-shine shoes in there, some socks, no belt, a pair of jeans, and a t-shirt, a pair of sneakers. And that was it. That's all I had in there. And I didn't even have a belt. The belt must have been one of the other boxes. So what happened to my stuff? I wondered, burnt up in a fire? Well, I was talking to some of the other guys there, and he goes, "Yeah, my stuff they lost it. They lost all my civilian gear." And then another guy later on I spoke to, he goes, they told me that they had a flood, a hurricane came through here, a typhoon, and his stuff was washed away in the flood or some crazy thing. Of course, it's ridiculous. That stuff ended up in the black market somewhere, either in Hong Kong or Singapore or Vietnam. All of our gear is being sold somewhere else to the benefit of the Pogues back in the rear. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's coincidences. I was a cynic, and I still am a cynic, and I don't believe in too many coincidences at one time. Well, I got put my uniform on the next day. The guy scarfed a belt from somebody else. Didn't fit me. I sucked in my gut, and I managed to pass through inspection. And they put me on a plane for Honolulu, for Hawaii. And then from there we flew to El Toro and got a bus or something to Pendleton. So felt good to be back in the States, let me tell you. We were allowed off base, and some of the guys went to Disneyland. Some of them went to the bars, around Pendleton and San Diego. I was blitzed. I found it very difficult to process all of this, and of course you're reading the paper. We had only gotten the Stars and Stripes. We had no idea of all the turmoil that was going on in the country against the Vietnam War, the protests and the marches and the rage that was tearing America apart of the Vietnam War. We had no idea. When we went in, everybody was singing the Ballad of the Green Berets, on the radio. And John Wayne was out there, fighting the Viet Cong. And when we returned, the news and the radio, everything was full of this anti-war, the anti-war movement. Well, if they, even asked me, I would have told them I was pretty anti-war at the time myself, but nobody asked me. Well, anyway, we got onto a flight that was going to go from Pendleton to San Diego over to Newark, a commercial flight again. And it was going to be, it was leaving late in the afternoon. It was arriving in Newark in the very early part of the morning, at 1 o'clock in the morning. So we were all wearing our uniforms, and they had given us a little plastic pouch with all of our ribbons on it that each one of us had won, and I had never worn those on my uniform before. I had one little service ribbon, I think, when I started out, but when I was in Vietnam, we got all kinds of awards from the Vietnamese and from our organizations, unit citations. I had a Purple Heart ribbon stuff. I really didn't know all of them, which one was which. I had never worn them before on a uniform. I always had, the only thing I wore on my khakis was my golden jump wings. And now I got a whole bunch of these things on my chest. Well, I didn't get a chance to wear them for long, because when we all got on the plane, a staff sergeant comes in and he goes, "Men," he goes, "I got a piece of advice for you." He goes, "There's a bunch of protesters that meet these planes when they come in from the West Coast." He goes, "And even if it's early in the morning, you'll probably run into them, and they can get nasty. He says, if I were you, I'd take off my uniform and I'd put on my civvies." This sergeant, corporal, says, "Sergeant, I'm not going to take off my uniform. I'm proud of what I did over in Vietnam. I'm proud of these medals here." And he says, "It's up to you. It's up to you. You're a civilian now. He goes, whatever you want, because I'm just telling you what I'd recommend, and I'd recommend taking those uniforms and changing into civilian clothes, and that's my recommendation. But you do what you want." So after thinking about it for a while, I joined most of the other men in the men's room there in the back of the plane as it was flying over. And I changed out of my uniform, and I put on my civilian, my jeans and my t-shirt, my sneakers. Boy, did that feel strange. And I looked in the trash bin that they had there in the plane, and it was just loaded with uniforms. The standard Marine Corps uniforms and even medals and stuff. The guys had just thrown it in there. I didn't know what to do with mine. I don't remember what I did with them. Whether they joined the rest of them in the trash there, or whether I brought them home and they were eventually lost. I do know that I made sure that I kept my golden jump wings and my that challenge coin that the lieutenant had given me. But I wasn't planning on using my uniform again, So and those ribbons didn't mean anything to me. So we're flying into Newark, and now it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And the plane lands, and sure enough, when we exit, there's a group of maybe 8 or 10 protesters there, and they're wearing camouflage utilities. And they all got beards. A lot of them have beards, and they look like they just came out of the bush to some extent. So, and the girls were there, and they had paisley dresses, and boy, they looked good, to us. But I just kept on walking. I kept walking right to the exit there as fast as I could go, and I could see them picking and yelling at the guys who had their uniforms on and left their uniforms on. But if we had stuck together as a group, but we weren't a group. We were all individuals. We were all civilians. We could have blasted right through those half a dozen people, but nobody wanted any trouble. There was a big policeman from Newark just standing there watching, as we went through, watching them abuse us as we went past them. They're spitting at us and calling us names and, waving this flag in front of our faces as we try to move through. And he's standing there like a big lunk. He probably sees it every single night. They're probably friends with the guys, They're probably best of buddies. But he certainly didn't do anything to break it up. So I went outside, and there was a taxi there. Now, I could have waited, and taken a bus in the morning, but I was wanting to get home the worst way. So I grabbed that taxi and told him to take me to my hometown. And and as he's driving out of Newark there, I say to him, I'm really glad to get home. I just got back from Viet Nam. And he goes, "That's so. That's so." That's what he said to me. He kept on driving, didn't say anything else. Till we got to right in front of my house. And then he turned over to me in the back, and he puts out his hand and he goes like this, and he goes, "That'll be $2.50. I think, what's that? $2.50? That's too low. Not $250. I said, $250? He goes, "Yeah, $250. $250, bud." And he's had his hand there. Well, I had plenty of money. When I knew I was getting ripped off, this was only like half an hour, 45 minutes. I gave him the $250, and he stuffed it in his top shirt. I got out. Went into my back door, which is a screen door, and my father had always latched it. And there was a butter knife there that you could unlatch the screen with. And as I was doing that, my old dog, my collie that I had, was there, and she comes out, and she couldn't see very well. Her eyes were almost blind, but she smelled me. Her tail was going a mile a minute, and she's going, made me feel so glad, so good. I hugged her, big furry dog, and she was licking my face. And my father must have heard, the door open. And he comes out, he's still in his underwear, comes out, and he was really glad to see me. And He was a rather unemotional guy. He was a long foreman. He worked on the docks in New York, Pier 46, for the Erie Lackawanna Railroad there. He was a rough and tough guy, but he was glad to see me. But he said to me, "You could be careful when you wake your mother up. I don't want her to get in any shock. You know, she was operated on for cancer about 2 weeks ago, and she's still recovering." And boy, that was a shock to me. I said, well, "Oh no, you should have told me, Dad." She goes, "Well, your mother didn't want to worry you." Jeez, you know. So I went in real softly, you know, and she heard me, and she woke up and a smile and tears came down her face. I bent over and she gave me a kiss. It was subdued, but yeah, that cancer eventually took her life fairly quickly. You know, she never really recovered from it. I went back into the kitchen. My father was making coffee, which he always did first thing in the morning. He was smoking his cigarettes and making coffee, and didn't say very much to me, and I didn't know really what to say to him. But eventually we sat down with some coffee, and he goes, "You know, Dick," he goes, "you were the reason your mother came down with cancer. She worried about you night and day, you know, all the time you were gone. Boy, could have hit me over the head with a bat." I said, "Dad," I just got home. I said, "You know, you can say something like that to me after I've been gone for 13 months? Well, when I thought about it later, I realized that he was absolutely correct. I'm sure I did cause that, at least to some extent, not intentionally, but through sheer stupidity and selfishness. You know, there was no reason that I went in other than my own ego. I was a young kid. I wanted adventure. I wanted foreign countries. I wanted to be a hero. I wanted all of this. I. Not thinking about what it would do to my family. Not thinking what it would do to my mother and father to have me go in. And then not only that, not only did I go into the Marine Corps, but I volunteered for probably one of the most hazardous duties you could have in the Marine Corps. You know, I didn't have to go into airborne. I didn't have to go into force recon and recon. I'm sure I could have gotten into some other part of the military where I wouldn't have been exposed to that danger and have them worry about me being exposed to the danger. And what was I thinking about sending them the pictures of myself with a rifle sitting in the boonies? You know, what did that do to them every time they got a packet of pictures from me? You know, I'm standing there with a M60 machine gun. Good grief. What an idiot.